93, listening to that, Stacey Clare, who's the co-founder of the East London Strippers Collective. Well, Stacey, your initial reaction to what Sasha said?
Hi, I listen to interviews like that with a kind of feeling in the pit of my stomach. It's kind of infuriating to hear someone who's never been a dancer talk about my job or my industry with such kind of stigmatizing language and such inflammatory language, which is kind of, you know, aiming to try and like whip up sort of this hysteria within the public. And, you know, yeah, it's really difficult to listen to someone trying to critique an industry they've never worked in.
Well, why would
campaigning?
Well, maybe she can't understand why any woman would want to put themselves in a situation where they've got lots of men leeching at them.
Sure, that's fine, but they don't have to. I'm not expecting everyone to understand my job and why I do it. But what I would like to see is these campaigners just back off from critiquing an industry that we're trying to reform ourselves from the inside. So, you know, the reason we've set up a strippers collective and we're trying to unionize dancers is because we know that there's problems in our industry. We experience them as well, of course. We're not, you know, we're not victims. This kind of language that we're spoken about as if we're kind of victims, which is actually really demoralizing and degrading in itself. And I've been campaigning and doing activism around this for 5 years, and I've never once been approached by any one of these women's rights groups to discuss, okay, how can we collaborate? Which clubs are the worst offenders? You know, where are the girls being mistreated most? It's, you know, they talk about these kind of exit strategies. I've never once seen one of these women's rights groups.
Okay, well, help me understand, Stacey.
Outside the industry.
So help me understand. Why would you want to put yourself in the situation where men are leering at you and objectifying you?
So to describe my job as simply being leered at and objectified by men, I think reveals a deep misunderstanding of what my job actually involves.
Well, that's part of it,
and
isn't it?
I think that's a huge, widely misunderstood thing, that, you know, the public thinks that all I do is get kind of leered at by men. Actually, sex work involves quite a lot of people skills. It involves a lot of companionship, it's intimacy, it's emotional labour. And I've done, by the way, as well as being a stripper, I've done care work. I've worked behind bars. I've sat behind tills in supermarkets, and I've served the public. I've done a lot of public-facing work, and I've got to say, I'm no less leered at and no less kind of demoralised by how the general public treat me as how men treat me in strip clubs. So for me,
well, hold on a second. Now that's a stretch, surely, Stacey.
Well, not really. Ask any 21-year-old girl who works in a bar. Ask a 25-year-old girl who's working in a bar until 3 a.m. how many times she gets sexually harassed.
But I guess the point there, Stacey, is that if there are people leering at you, objectifying you in a bar, you can tell them to clear off and don't do it. You can't do that in a strip club because that's why you're there.
I can do that in a strip club. I absolutely can do that in a strip club. The problem with strip clubs is, I tell you what, plenty of people come to strip clubs and misbehave just like they do in bars. Now, the problem is that in a bar you get paid minimum wage, which I think is appalling anyway. Minimum wage is a disgrace. But the problem with strip clubs is we're not paid by the clubs to be there, and that's what we want to change. So we're campaigning and we're trying to unionize dancers so that we can change the business model, so that dancers aren't having to pay to work. They're not going home with empty pockets. And we've started collaborating with a trade union called United Voices of the World. And in the last 6 months, we've got claims in that's happening right now. Claims are going in against clubs, and we've had one win already to prove that dancers have got worker status and have employment rights. Because the type of exploitation that goes on in strip clubs is financial. Okay, the Me Too campaign and the Time's Up campaign and all the women's rights campaigns have proven that, like, sexism and sexual harassment is endemic. It's across the board. It's not unique to the sex industry. And what sex workers do is we make economic choices absolutely within a limited set of choices. But why should we have those choices taken away from us when we could do something to fix it?
Because in this day and age, why is there an industry objectifying women?
That's not just the sex industry, though, is it? Look at marketing and advertising. Look how much women are objectified in the media on a kind of daily basis. And also, what about if women do consent to it? What about if fully grown, consenting adults of their own volition choose to trade on their sexuality and trade on the way they look to make a living? Isn't that what actresses do? Isn't that what models do? Why, and men do it as well. You only have to go on Instagram and look up hashtag, gym fit and see the number of men who are trading on their bodies and their sexuality now as well. So, sorry, I just don't buy this kind of idea that we should all just be kind of chaste and covered up. What we should do is we should be educating people about consent. We should be looking at the ways men are conditioned, because if a man can't tell the difference between a consenting female adult in a strip club who's inviting him to sexually objectify her in exchange for money, if he can't tell the difference between that and someone in the park or someone outside in the public, then that's a problem with society, isn't it?
Let me talk to Tuesday LaVue as well. Stay there, Stacey, who's a burlesque dancer, renegade stripper. Evening to you, Tuesday.
Hi, good evening.
Hi. Do you feel objectified when you're doing your job?
Oh no, not at all. I'm in a slightly different position to Stacey in that my audiences are quite different because my audiences are in bars and theatres and clubs. So it's not quite as intimate. Like I don't give lap dances and stuff like that. However, my industry is very adjacent to sex work and to the work that women like Stacey Claire do. So I entirely support their right to do it and their right to choose to express their sexuality for money if they choose to.
So if you're not being objectified, what is happening? What do you think the men are thinking about when they're looking at you, Tuesday?
Well, there's an exchange, isn't there? I mean, it's labor. It's using your body to achieve something for money. And I think the thing that makes a lot of people uncomfortable and makes a lot of people who consider themselves feminists, but aren't my type of feminism, which includes sex workers and includes all different kinds of women and people, is we just need to let people be able to make their own choices, right? And if somebody chooses to express their sexuality and their sensuality and monetize that, that's their prerogative. And because somebody else has a deep discomfort with their own sensuality and their own sexuality, they don't get to police that.
Well, they may not have a discomfort with their own sexuality. They may have a discomfort with what you're doing and what society's allowing people like you to do to yourself, Tuesday.
But if you listen to what I believe it was Sasha was the caller previous to Stacey
Sure.
Claire, and you listen to what Stacey's saying, what I hear from somebody like Sasha, and I'm not singling her out, it's just something I've been told over and over and over again under the brand of a particular type of feminism, is, how wrong we are and how what we're doing we shouldn't be allowed to do. And what I see time and time again, she was talking about how strippers are damaged people. Not in my experience. There's, damn lies and statistics. I'd be interested to know where those statistics are coming from. But what I find actually is kind of the reverse. I find that the women that are most ardently opposed to strip clubs and really have a deep hatred of sex workers, it comes from their own bad experiences, which is really tragic and is really what we need to be addressing is the wider issues, the issues that Stacey's talking about assaults that happen in the street, about the way that women are treated in workplaces, all workplaces. That's what we need to do. And the thing that you really need to know is that sex workers are the canaries in the mine. When sex workers are treated badly, it trickles on for the rest of women. And you can see what's happening in America right now with Foster and Festa, and the impact that's having on the average woman who isn't a sex worker.
Okay, really interesting. Tuesday, thank you. Stacey, thank you. We'll take your calls later on tonight.